Hi, I'm Rich Fink of the Western Loud Art and Studio Tour, and today I am privileged to be able to be interviewing JIllian Holland, painter and sculptor. JIllian, how are you doing?
Great, thank you.
Good. Let's get started. Can you tell us a little bit about your artistic journey?
Sure. So I made the decision when I was super young. I think I was about 15 when I decided this was the journey that I was going to take. I was good at a couple things, academics, basketball, and being able to create three-dimensional artwork. So anything that I could see in 3 dimensions, I could copy. So it was definitely a gift that I got early. And I had professors and some students along the way, like Michael Allison, that helped push me just to make sure that no matter what I made, I had to somehow figure out how to make it better. And
Hmm.
when I broke it, they challenged me to fix it. And that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to learn, was that it wasn't just good enough to have a concept or an idea. If it didn't quite get to where you wanted it to, you had to figure out how to get it there. It had to go to completion. So those are challenges that I really loved and accepted and have worked on my whole life.
Well, that sounds great. It's a great story. So, how long have you been a professional artist?
Always. So
Well,
I've always had a couple of little gigs along the way, as every artist has, but
uh-huh.
art has always been my number one. And I've had the privilege of working with some really wonderful mentors and monumental sculptors
Mhm.
and being able to earn a living off of my passion and being able to live a life that I feel is extraordinary. Being able to work on the largest bronze, figuratively, in the United States since Iwo Jima in the 1950s is incredible. And to be able to know the artists and be able to work with them, to be able to earn a living doing what you love is exceptional. So not only do I get to make my work, but I get to help other artists with my talents be able to create theirs. And I appreciate that tremendously. So
Well,
Paul DiPasquale is somebody that I work with a lot. Robert Bricker is the founder uh, for all the bronzes and things that we come out through Virginia. And I tend to be the chaser, the finisher, the one that can put the fingerprint back into the bronze and all of the color and the vibrance and get it back to where it was in clay before it was cast.
that sounds fantastic. It really does. In your career, how has your technique changed over time?
Well, uh, it's a lifetime of learning, I will tell you. Every time you sit down for something new, it's a challenge, it's a puzzle that you have to figure out, which is the most beautiful thing about art, is it's not repetition. You're not making one thing and making 1,000 of those. They're always slightly different, and you're always pushing yourself to the next step. Um, so by learning the techniques and learning the basics, and having the people there to help teach you and train you to get those even better as you go along in your artistic career, those visions get to become larger. So my favorite scale is about 10 feet tall, but I obviously make a lot of smaller things, which I call models. And they help for me to see what problems I'm going to get into when I get into a larger piece. But I mean, obviously, it costs more to make the larger pieces, and you have to be ready for it. You have to have all the models and all the work put into the small pieces so that when you get to the large one, you're not having as many hiccups as you did when you were at the beginning of your concept. And I start from scratch. I start with drawings, then I paint them, then I start making small models, and then finally I end up with the larger pieces. And the nice thing about my process is I get to sell all the pieces in between. So my drawings
Mm.
become something that are viable in order to for people to purchase and be able to support me, even if it's not the final project, right? Which is the high dollar one. They can
Right.
still support me along the way, doing the smaller pieces, the paintings, all of the process pieces, which is fantastic.
You go through this process to make sure when you get to the the big item, you're not making those mistakes, right? That's your point of view.
That's
So how do you
correct.
make the models? Are they brass themselves, or are they um, clay, or what?
Well, it's all different. It depends on what the final piece is going to be. They're usually, my models are around 12 inches tall. So, like in casting, a 12-inch tall piece is still a substantial product by the time you
Yeah.
get done with it in bronze. So you can start in clay, which requires molds and waxes before it goes to bronze.
Right.
Uh, Sometimes when it's at 12 inches, that's the final product. I don't feel the need to get it larger. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, I need to adjust here, here, and here so that it'll pull out of the mold a little bit easier, or when I go to weld all the pieces back together, they're going to fit more appropriately without as much warping. So I also make them out of steel. So I'm a structural steel welder as well. So I can make the armatures and the bases and really kind of get the feeling for how it moves in three-dimensional space versus a flat space.
Okay. Well, that answers my question. That's
Good.
great. So I would like to bring out the three images of your artwork that were, juried for the tour, and then we can talk about them, and you can tell me how were inspired to do these type of things, and how you brought it to life.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, and here we are. So I would like to start rather traditionally from left to right, and what can you tell me about this incredible musical instrument that you created?
Well, I like to say that I make work in series. So I have an entire musical series. This piece is cast out of ductile iron, so it's as strong as your fence outside. Um, and it's created to show my variety, if you will. So the very top of the instrument is realism. It's one violin. And then as you move down to the bass, it splits into two and then finally into three. And I felt like sculpturally, I was trying to show how a fiddle player was playing the instrument. So if you're holding it at the neck, that's where you're strongest and that's where it's stillest. But if you actually were to watch the instrument being played, the body moves. And so therefore at the bass, that's where it became three instead of one. So from realism to cubism, all in one sculpture. And that
Well,
piece just purchased by Timothy Bryant. So it now lives in Maryland.
well, it's a beautiful piece, Jillian. It really is. And I do like your concept, from going to realism to cubism. That's excellent. So you said that this was part of a collection, right?
Yes, so I have a whole series of musical paintings and musical works, whether they're in drawing, oil, acrylic, and some welded ones along with the cast pieces. So I really enjoy taking a song and seeing how the artist is playing that particular song and transferring that movement into an actual painting. So as I'm sitting, I have one behind me from a jazz player playing the trumpet. And so everywhere that he moved in that song is where I tried to capture that piece. And the sound that was coming out of his trumpet, I tried to mimic that with how the bell of the trumpet was being displayed. So you could see how loud it was or quiet it was at that moment in that particular song. So it's challenging and exciting at the same time. And the work is turning out quite exceptional. I'm very excited about it.
Do you play a musical instrument?
I do. I play the flute. I've recently purchased a ukulele and a violin, so I'm working on strumming with those. But stringed instruments are a little bit more different than woodwinds, so there's a giant learning curve going on there. But nonetheless, something really fun to play with.
So let's move to the middle. And what can you tell me about this image of the three?
Well, these are really fun. So this is part of explaining process, if you will. So on the back, you can see the white one is made out of plaster. So that's a plaster mold from the original. And then the one in the middle is cast out of iron. And the one in the forefront that's full of color and patina is cast out of bronze. So it helps show the variety in my work, the depth that each different material can add to a piece. And it helps show me trying to push the limits. So especially the iron piece in the center for this particular series of minis is something that I was challenging myself with George Beasley, who's a professor at Georgia State. And we were trying to get sand castings in iron to actually get more dimension. And it was something that hadn't been done before. So not only with this piece, but I also did it figuratively with small little faces and things, where I was actually able to get it, instead of having a 10% pull that you need to have, I was able to get these undercuts in metal that hadn't been seen before. So we were working on a process that foundry is from the 1700s. So we were working with an old process and turning it into something exceptional and new.
Wow, that's incredible. It really is. And these images that are in this this trilogy here, what do they represent?
Well, these are ballerina slippers. So it's part of my musical series because not only do you need to be an instrumentalist to enjoy it or just love the sound of music, but sometimes it just makes your body move and want to dance. And I think that the dancers are just as important of an expression of how people enjoy and get to have this feeling of just joy. So I wanted to make sure that when you're looking at my work or looking at my process, not only are you looking at the details of it, but that you're actually getting to have an emotional experience.
Okay. And speaking of emotions, let's move to the right to your heart sculpture here. So what are you trying to say with this sculpture, and what inspired you?
Well, I am a transplant to Virginia. I was born and raised in Arizona. And so these hearts, this is part of what I call my Love Notes collection. They're inspired by just embracing Virginia. Virginia is for lovers, right? And we've got these giant hearts all over our state. And it's part of me just embracing this state and all of the love and attention that has been brought to me while being here. So this particular piece is called Heartbeat, and it's all a steel collection currently, and then these maple bases that I cut and have whittled down to their sizes. But they all are just basically something that you could give your significant other to show that they are always a part of you, that you're always thinking of them, that they're what make your heart tick. Or I have one called Winding Your Heart, where, it's just this expression of gratitude and a thank you.
Well, it's really interesting, and I'm really delighted that you have come to Virginia to bring your art on. That's just great. So it's okay with you. We're going to move back to where the two of us are chatting, and we'll take it from there. Is that okay?
Great.
Okay. And here we are. And here we are. So, is that the painting with the about the jazz? So that's a painting, right?
It is.
Is
So
it in oils or I'm sorry, what?
it's an acrylic. It's about 4 feet by 3 feet, so a larger one of the series,
Hmm.
but all monotone, all black and white.
Yes. Okay. And I guess my question is, I mean, I understand exactly what you're doing, trying to capture essentially all these micro moments of the jazz player playing his song. Did you use photographs, like multiple photographs, or were you sketching, or what was the base for this?
So video. So a video of the instrumentalist playing over and over and over again. So basically putting that video on a loop for hours on end.
Wow. Mm.
And starting from his starting point and then watching every step that he moved and where he moved during that song and how explosive that note was at the time.
Okay.
So,
It's
and sometimes I have them in color, and sometimes those colors are more showing that vibrance of tone.
Mhm. Well, it's really an incredibly vibrant piece as it is in black and white. It's great. So, I think that there's a lot of people, a lot of art lovers who would love to see more of your collections, whether it be your sculptures or your painting. And but of course, where we are now to do that is has to be part of the internet type thing. So if you could give me your links to your social media, your URL to your website, that would be great, because then people could not only look at your work, but I certainly think they'd buy it too, which is always nice.
That keeps you going, doesn't it?
It does. Yes, it does. So, what are your connections?
So I use Facebook. So you can find me JIllian Holland and go to my private Facebook, or I also have my website, which is sculpturebyjill.com.
Okay.
On Facebook as well, you can go to that link where I update, on Sculpture by Jill, and try to give you little glimpses into what I'm doing that week, or what I'm trying to show you for the moment. And sometimes it's just fun things, like here's my little goats or my little farm. And sometimes it's like, hey, look at what I'm working on today. Check out this process, or look who I'm working with today, which is very exciting for me. Like, for example, are my little hearts that I've been working on, my Love Notes collection. I just took it down to Nashville, working with Michael Allison in Nashville Glass Blowing. And we started casting these hearts in glass, and me taking these glass hearts and putting them into my metal work and adding that as a whole new layer to this work. So it's really fun having those connections and seeing what those connections inspire you to do.
Well, JIllian, it's been great talking to you today. And I have three things actually that I would like you to do for me. One is to stay safe. Another is to stay healthy. And the third one is to have a fabulous day today.
Well, it was wonderful speaking with you. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. That's so sweet. I hope you learned a little bit about my process today.
Okay. You take care.
You too.